Hi, my name's Curt Carlson, and I'm here with my value creation tip for the week. And today I want to talk about things that people say that are problematic. Their thoughts they have, their suggestions, ideas, mental models that actually get in the way. They don't really help. They slow down progress. And these are things that we've heard all around the world from big companies, small companies, universities, national laboratories, incubators, all over the place, and they get in the way. And so I'm going to give you 10 today and give you the format's going to be I'll describe the problem, the things people say, just describe that very briefly, and then give you a tip for how you can either mitigate it or address it in your teams. So with that, here we go. So the first one is people often come to me and say, Curt, do you have 2 hours to listen to my brilliant idea? Splendid. Now, what I really want to hear is what is the unmet need? What's the major unmet need, or at least what is the major problem that they're trying to solve? Until I hear that, I don't know really whether I want to spend 2 hours listening to this brilliant new ideas. But if there really is a big insight into a new unmet need, then maybe we'll get to that point. So the tip here is always start off with your need, the unmet need. Having a customer is so much more important than having an idea. You can often come up with an idea once you've figured out what that customer is and what they need. Number two, people say our solution is better than the competition. Terrific. Better. What does better mean? I have no idea what that really means. Does it mean 10%? That might be important, or does it have to be 100%? I don't know until they tell us what it is and does it matter or not. In fact, in general, people say all the time, bigger, better, faster, cheaper, words like that, which are really not that helpful. And what you don't want to do is add ambiguity to lack of knowledge. If you're not sure, give us your best guess. Give us what you're thinking about achieving. And then, of course, you'll have to determine whether that's true or not. So here's the tip. Whenever you see bigger, better, faster, cheaper, make sure you find some way to quantify it and be specific. Quantify. Number three. It's a classic. If we build it, they will come. Sure. This may have worked a couple times in the past, but it certainly is not a systematic way to be successful at innovation. And I think the idea of a minimum viable product has made it worse. The problem is, of course, people love their idea and they immediately want to go build it. That's a natural tendency. But it's almost always a mistake. Until you really understand what the need is and have a compelling approach, you're probably going to build the wrong thing. You're going to put together too big of a team. You're going to go off in a different direction and waste a lot of money. That's not a good plan. So the tip here is to deeply understand the customer need, the actual customer need, and then develop a compelling value proposition. Number four, we're going to win because we have great people and terrific facilities. Swell. Well, cabinet makers have amazing toolboxes, but of course, when you hire one, the question is, what are they going to do for you? And it's the same thing here. What's the big important thing you're going to do for us? It's going to change our lives and make it better in some way. And your great people and great facilities are like your toolbox. But the funny thing is, if you have a really big idea, you can probably get even better people and better facilities. So the tip here is, tell us what you're going to do for us. If it's a really big idea, we'll help you develop a better toolbox of people, capabilities, and money. Number five, we're going to win because our team works really hard. That's inspiring, but the problem with that is we're in the global innovation economy, and anybody who's doing anything that's serious, by definition, is going to work really, really hard. It's a little bit like we're on the Olympics now. And when you put up your website, all of a sudden the entire world is competing with you. And only a few are going to win. So what matters again is, do you have a really big idea? Have you identified a big important need with a big important solution? And then of course, you're going to have to work really, really hard, and you better be really, really passionate about your idea, or else you're not going to win the gold medal in the Olympics. So the tip here is, always remember you're in the Olympics, and you better do everything you can to keep on improving as fast and as you can. Number 6, I love this one. We'll get to the high risk parts later after we've done some preliminary work on other parts. Marvelous. We'll get to the high risk parts later. Well, it's true that every initiative has hundreds of things to do, and it's very enjoyable to do some things early. It makes you feel like you're making progress. Human nature. The problem with that, of course, is typically with innovations, there are a few things that are critical, and if they work, you probably have a pretty good shot going forward, but if they don't work, then you're stuck. And so you want to start with those few things first. And usually there's only a couple, but they're really fundamental to what you're doing. With the iPhone, it was the touch screen. You know, if that didn't work, Jobs had to do something else. But once he proved that he could do that, of course, there were hundreds of thousands of probably things that had to happen to put the final product together. But it all hinged on that one thing. Can he get the touch screen to work? So the tip here is to start with the critical, risky parts first, and de-risk, debug, prove you can actually make those happen. Number 7, we'll figure out the business model after we launch. Brilliant. The problem with that, of course, is your offering and your business model are pretty tightly integrated together normally. And so if you're out in the marketplace and you've made, you know, your estimate about what the business model might be is wrong, you might discover that your offering is wrong. You've put together the wrong team. You need to raise more money, and you just might go away. What's amazing to me is that this thought of the offering and the business model being integrated seems to be pretty rare in most people's head. So I've asked thousands of executives what the definition they have for innovation in their organization. And so far, there's only been a couple out of thousands who actually said an offering with a business model. They've forgotten the business model. And if there's no business model, there's no sustainable way to keep the product in the marketplace, which means it's not an innovation. It means it's an invention maybe, but it's not, certainly not an innovation. So don't make that mistake. So when you are considering or you're building your new initiative, remember, you got to start with a pretty good debug, de-risk model for your business model as well as your offering. And at a minimum, when you get out there, there has to be a good working hypothesis for whether you can prove or disprove it really fast. Okay, number 8. People say they have no competition. Awesome. There's always competition. And it's amazing what people say sometimes. I mean, I'm going to make a joke, but let's say somebody comes in with a new drone company and they tell you what's different about their drone companies, knowing that there are already more than 400 drone companies. And what it sounds like is that, you know, this drone is going to be a different color than the other 400 that are already being produced somewhere in the world. That's a joke, but it feels like that. It's the differentiation is not significant enough to make any difference. They're not going to make it. People are basically following the kind of zeitgeist of the time. You know, drones are important. I'm going to build a drone. Not a good plan. And also now competition can come from unexpected directions. So consider what Uber has done to the taxi industry. And that kind of business model innovation that we're seeing increasingly because of IT is now being, you're seeing that in basically every kind of business where people are being attacked by different ways. So imagine this. So let's say you have a new online financial service and you're competing, you think, with Bank of America. Well, you know, down the road a few years, Amazon and Alibaba might show up. And so you better have a big, important idea if you're going to have to confront those guys. So here's the tip. Never doubt that you have serious competition. And imagine that they're only a few steps behind you in gaining ground. That's the mindset in today's world. Number 9, the need is obvious. That's amazing. We don't think the need is obvious that often. It always has to be understood, unpacked, and reframed, often hundreds of times. Consider again the iPhone. I use that because we all know what that is. At the time, Nokia was the world's leading phone company, and they were using touch keypads. And if you ask people, and there are a lot of surveys done, people said what they wanted was better keypads. They wanted more keys and different configurations, that kind of stuff. Well, what they were really asking for was convenience and functionality. And Steve Jobs realized that. He realized it wasn't the keypads, it was the functionality. So then the question was, how do you do that? And of course, the solution to that was a reconfigurable. The key insight to the need was to make the display be reconfigurable. So basically, you could produce infinite numbers of the equivalent of keys to be able to find all the different services you wanted to. So, and of course, 7 years later, we put Nokia out of business. So the tip here is, do your homework. Rarely is the real need obvious. There's an apparent need, but then there's a real need. So, and you're probably going to have to reframe the problem and the apparent need hundreds of times before you get to a really solid understanding. So number 10, the last one. People come in and they think they have a terrific value proposition. And I'm always suspicious. Why am I suspicious? Well, because as I've mentioned several times in this series, we've listened to, we've been actually done workshops with over 500 different teams, leading companies and what have you from around the world. And we start off by asking them our 4 questions. What's the big important unmet need you're addressing, and what's the big market opportunity, the need? What's the approach for your offering and business model? They go together. What are your unique benefits per cost? That's the definition of value for the customer and other stakeholders. And why is that customer value 2 or 10 times better than the competition or the alternatives? Just 4 basic questions. And these teams often have been working on their initiatives for months, if not years, and spent millions of dollars. And what we discover is that they really can't answer those 4 questions in a compelling, quantitative way. And after just 2-day workshop, what we also discover is that almost all of them have pivoted significantly from what they came in with when we started the workshop. Sometimes it's a little pivot, sometimes it's a lot, and many times the programs have just been canceled because they weren't that, they don't make sense. And we don't decide that, we just give them the framework for them to decide that. So those 4 questions are really fundamental because they set the direction for your initiative. And if you haven't got that pretty well outlined and debugged and de-risked, then you may go off in the wrong direction. And if you have to pivot a lot, that may be the end of your venture. So the tip here is start with your NABC value proposition, make it compelling, make it quantitative, de-risk it. And if you do that, it'll save you an enormous amount of time and money and really significantly increase your chances of success. So those are my 4 tips. Now you'll find them at the end of this talk. I'd love to hear your comments in the notes section on YouTube. You know, how many have you seen, for example? What other ones have you seen? What other problems? What other misunderstandings that people have that get in their way of being successful and efficient and effective value creators? So leave a note, please. And you can also work with us on, I have a blog on LinkedIn where we can have a back and forth conversation about these things. So I hope some of these thoughts will help you in your value creation activities, and you can use a few of them so you can be more successful. And remember, it's through value creation and innovation that we're going to make the world a better place. Take care. Bye-bye.